Welcome back to my budget app series, where I attempt to create a personal budgeting app from scratch and document the whole process on YouTube. In this second episode of the series, I will be creating the user interface design of the whole application, taking into consideration the multiple client types that will need to consume the user interface and many other intricate details. Without further introduction, let's just jump into the design software and talk about the details. Alright, before we start, I should mention I'm not a professional designer by any means. I'm just the developer, but this is my side project that I'm doing alone, so I need to produce a design in order to complete it. Now, this is, I've opened Figma, I've prepared a few assets. This is my first project in Figma. I've done a few short courses on how to use it. So far, I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest. I like how it works, very performant, very intuitive and easy to use. And so far, I've been liking the features. I previously used XD, which is now discontinued, but this is, I think, superior in many ways. Now, without getting sidetracked, I've prepared a few things because otherwise the video would be unbearably long. It would be too long if I have to prepare these details. Just a wireframe of the basic layout that I'm planning to design and a few components. Let's jump into the components first. I've saved this as Figma components. Very basic things. Very short list. Only the absolute essentials. I'll add more if I need them. I have two buttons. This is just one primary button style with an icon option. I think personally that icons make buttons much easier to recognize than just a textual button. At least when I use InDesign buttons, I always include an icon option because I like the user experience improvement that they bring. Just the basic iconography sometimes can help the user recognize a button more quickly than just textual content. A very basic icon set I can add to this one as we go and as we design, but this includes the very basics, plus, times, chevrons, and search icons, and also some icons which I plan to use for navigation, settings, budgets, etc. This is the most complicated component, this table component as I call it. This is meant to represent a budget type. In this case, that's debt, but we'll have these tables for savings, expenses, debts, and also income. As you can see, it's a component with a title, in this case debt, a few columns. I have three visualized. Only debt and savings will have the first column, which will be leftover debt or accumulated savings. The other income and expenses tables will have just planned and either paid or received. And here we have the user created categories. In this case, the placeholders are mortgage and student loan, where you can add new categories if you wish, and progress bars beneath them, as you right now demonstrate. If I change this progress bar component, I have this swap instance. I made a few different variations, 25, 50, 75%, so that I can visualize how it would really look. Notice the colors. Right here in the right, I have saved a few styles. In terms of colors, I have a primary active color, which will be used for clickable things, like links, like this new one link, and the buttons. I think blue is the most easily recognizable primary and active color because it's used extensively for years and decades. Now, the green color is secondary inactive color and it's used for these progress bars. It's meant to represent something important, something that is interactive in a way because it can change as you add transactions, but it's not actionable. I cannot click on it, it doesn't do anything. So the secondary green color will be used for that. I've just to mention, as I started on colors, I've included also some bright alternative colors for charts specifically. We will have a pie or donut chart with different categories, and charts usually work best, in my opinion, with vibrant different colors where you can easily recognize the differences between the categories. I've included some colors. I probably won't use all of them. These are just options for me. A very generous grayscale, 14 gray colors. These definitely don't look bad, in my opinion, if I overuse too much. a wide variation of grays, but they give me a lot of options for layering, represent, yeah, basically different layers, materials, and so on. And of course, black and white. I'll talk about textiles later as we reach that section. So yeah, the table supports 3 columns and the progress bar. I've made it into a component so that as we work right now, I can add rows and it will scale with the Figma layout settings, which is very neat. Form components, I need these at least to have forms for to add transactions, to add different items, the basic root operation forms. Also, we have user settings, of course. So I've included the very basics: email, select, sorry, not email, text input, select, and search, special search input, as well as a text area. I've included checkboxes and radio buttons in case I need them, and a label style, which encodes the spacing for it. Very basic typography, nothing interesting. I plan to use the Lato font throughout. It's a free Google font. It's a free font available on Google Fonts, so I like how it looks. It's not the clearest font when reading large blocks of text, but this application doesn't have any paragraphs. It essentially wouldn't have a paragraph anywhere. So that should be fine. I might experiment with clearer types that are easier to read, but we'll see. We can always swap the font after the design is complete to see how it looks. For now, I'm going with Lato. Basically, the base font size in this design is 14 pixels. That is a little bit lower than usually on the web. I think 16 pixels is standard. Marketing sites usually go higher these days. With applications like this one, the font size is typically a little bit lower. As you can see, Figma even right here, that interface is a lower font size than 16. I believe it's closer to 14, maybe 13. That's because these applications usually learn and you don't want a very large font to enlarge the user interface. You have a working area, you need to save space. So that 14 pixels should be fine, although I plan to scale up the design on larger screens. I'll talk about to scale up the font size on larger screens. I'll talk about that later. And finally, I have a model dialog. I don't want to lead my users to a separate page to create a new transaction, to edit something, to edit a transaction or create a new category. So I plan to do that in a model dialog that appears on top of the view and will be able to be closed. This component basically just includes a heading and a close button and some paddings, this box essentially. You can put any content here in that layout. I've just included 2 input fields and a button for the example. All right, so these are the components I've prepared. I've saved the headings as text styles as well to help me in case I need to add textual styles. That will be faster. And hopefully this would make designing the views easier. So let's talk about the wireframes. These are very low fidelity. They include mostly placeholder rectangles with labels, but I like to draw something like this first to focus primarily on the layout, see how things are laid out and how they would interact with each other, how they would complement each other, any conflicts. My idea and how I came up with this layout is, first of all, we have a 3 or 2 column layout depending how you look at it. The navigation is a fixed width narrow strip on the left, utilizing the fact that screens are wider than higher. So I would like to use the vertical space for multiple columns. The navigation is very slim because we don't have a lot of views, and that's what I am trying to achieve here. I want to fit, at least on laptops and desktop devices, all of the essential information, all of the functionality of the application in a single view. And that is a little bit challenging, but I think it's doable in this case because in these 2 columns to the right, they take equal amount of space. The left column represents the budget column basically. Here on the in the main content of it, we have 4 tables for incomes, expenses, debts, and savings. These tables, as I call them, are basically this component right here. where you actually plan your budgets. These tables are the essence of the application because you create categories and you plan amounts for them to spend, basically. So this is kind of the most important component in the app. These tables is where the user will be doing the most amount of work and interaction, which is why they are in the first column, left to right, and they're kind of centered between the navigation and the right column. On top of them, we have a header, which includes two elements, a month switch. This is also a budget period switch. That will be a drop down, which indicates the current month. If right now it's February 24, it would say to February 24 and a drop down to change the budget period. This is important because obviously this is the point from which you change to past budgets or create new budgets. This way you'll be able to reference reporting for past transactions. I think this is also one of the most important elements in the UI, which is why it's top left. That's a very prominent position. And we have the new transaction button in the budgets column. I will talk about this. This is one part which I'm hesitant about and might move. But this button to create new transactions is the second most important interaction a user has in terms of frequency, because budgeting is a large part of this application and interacting with these tables right here to plan the amounts of money you're willing to spend. And creating transactions is the other element where you actually record what you're spending. So I wanted to have this button in a very prominent position, and it's in the first row center. I have a few doubts about it, primarily because of this transactions table. I'll address that when I reach it. So this is the left column. The left column is basically the budget view. And on the right, we have what is currently called a summary. This is another area where I'm hesitant, and I'm very willing to change the heading of this entire section to something more meaningful. But it's called summary because it's not simply reporting, it's a combination of reporting and transactions at this point. That by itself is somewhat interesting. You usually not want to mix these concerns, but the benefit from having a single view is far outweighs the fact that we mix different kinds of information in a single section. Plus, the actual information is very related because all of these stats are related to the transactions below them. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm primarily concerned about naming, and summary is very general and broad. But here we have reporting on the top, these three boxes. The first box shows you the total amount of income, which you can also see in the table totals, but here it's more cluttered, so you need a separate box, in my opinion, where it's a clear amount. That's an important number for you. The total planned amount to spend, which you don't have anywhere, seeing as the total planned is separated in four tables, separate tables. You need to sum it up somewhere. This is that place. And the left to budget amount. That's also very important. This application is based on the zero-sum budget methodology, by which essentially you should budget for every cent of income that is flowing in that budget period. And that left to budget amount is important so that you know how much more you can basically the amount of money you have left over which you can plan to different budget categories. Next up, on the right, we have the planned versus actual statistic. These boxes will basically be just like stat boxes that show single digit amounts. In this case, 3 amounts, here 2. So planned versus actual will be the planned total versus the actual totals. And current cash is the difference of the two. Current cash is also an important metric because it shows you based on what you have planned and what you've actually spent, what is your current balance, which is very meaningful if you want to see if you've been a victim of fraud, for example, or if you want to compare your balance, if you've left any transactions, etc. Spendings per category, that's pretty straightforward. This wouldn't be just for the expenses table. These spendings per category would be for expenses, debt, and savings, basically where the income is going in the visual representation, which is very helpful to many people. I think it's an essential. This states pie chart. It might be a donut chart, something that is a little bit more wonky. Pie charts are too colorful, they take too much attention in my opinion. So probably a donut chart. I plan the color coding to represent if the category is an expense, debt, or savings, and individual categories will have their own fragments. By categories, I mean the user created categories of here in the debt table, we have mortgage and student loan. These would be the categories here in the pie chart, and debt would be the color of the fragments. At least that's the initial plan. We'll see how that goes. And lastly, here we have the transactions table. This will be a grid of the recorded transactions. You'll be able to filter and sort them to find something which you want to edit, remove. Of course, from here you will edit and remove transactions and you'll be able to inspect what you've recorded. You need that grid, it's essential. So right now I want to talk about the two doubts I have, drawbacks I see in this design. First of all, the new transactions button has a very prominent position and I like that specific location of it. I don't like that it's so far away from the transactions table. It's basically particularly the furthest point can be. This is strongly related to this transactions table, yet these two are separated. And that makes the design seem a little bit, the wireframe seem a bit scattered. This drawback I've taken again because, as I mentioned, these income tables and this transaction button are the most the elements the users will use most frequently. If it is in the summary section, different problems come up in terms of how visible the button is, and on mobile, which I'll show you later. So I don't want to do that. Still, I don't like the distance between the two, but I'm willing to take that drawback, I believe, because the transactions table is something secondary. It's not meant to be used frequently by the users. It will be used more as a method of checking, removing, or editing an item in case of a mistake. That table won't be utilized frequently, while the button right here for a new transaction will be utilized very frequently. And it's not like the new transaction button is not related to these tables. In fact, the only way to increment that paid amount and move these progress bars is by recording a new transaction. And even though that table directly represents the records which this button is creating, I'm okay moving it up, at least for now, even though that separates it from that table, as it has a better position in terms of, as I mentioned, recognition by the users and just ergonomics basically. It's top row center, which I hope would be easy to use. The alternative I was considering was a floating button here between the two sections, but I opt against that because floating buttons have other problems in terms of visibility, understandability. They are usually icon buttons only. I have other reservations for that. So for now, I'm going with this button in that position. That might change. And as I mentioned, the other concern I have is the naming of this section. Right now it's summary. It's very broad in general, that might change. And that's the basic desktop wireframe. That's the only view the users will need to open in order to do everything with the application. That was one of my primary goals because I consider it possible to fit the essential user interface components needed to interact with the budgeting app in a single desktop view. And I think I was able to do that. We'll see how usable it will be. We might need to change up a bit. Now on mobile and tablets, this is a different story because we don't have so much horizontal space. So in that case, we go to multiple views. Here's what I have decided to do in that scenario. The navigation goes to the bottom with icon buttons. This is very frequently used pattern on mobile applications, both iOS and Android, so should be fine there. And this is just one view. As you can see, this is just the budgets part. This is because this summary and reporting would be as a separate view right here. And because this part, income, planned amount, and especially left to budget, is very important while you create the budgets in the tables. I need to display it on mobile here between the month switch and the new transaction button. In this case, I don't need to display it here because it's more expanded, larger component in a similar place that's very convenient and visible. Yeah, that's just a compromise. Needs to happen because this information is essential. You need to know how much you have left to allocate to each category when you're creating your budgets right here, when you're entering the planned amounts. So that's critical. I've dropped the application logo because I prefer the icons in this navigation on mobile to be centered and to have a sort of similar hierarchical weight. And the logo is unnecessary either way. So yeah, that's the planned mobile view. Now I can start designing the actual user interface. To do that, I will copy the wireframe because the wireframe, even though it has just a couple of boxes with placeholders, has the layout set up, which will be very helpful. So I'll start with the desktop view and I'll copy it right here and I'll rename it to remove the wireframe part so that I can recognize that this frame is for the actual design of the dashboard view. Go up so of these and move this to the end. Just some organization work. All right. So I would actually, probably the backgrounds which currently denote the layout of the columns will change, but I'll start with more important things first. I'll start with the tables right here. Starting with the income table, I have the tables as components, so I can just drag them right here. Let's see where it got dragged. It needs to be below the header. Let me see, not inside the header, but below it. All right, so I just dragged a new table here and I can delete this placeholder for incomes table. Now I just need to rename that and change the information a bit. I like when I do my designs to add information that's close to reality so that I can see how they would actually look. If you just use placeholders and the same numbers everywhere, you won't get a real representation of the design and how it handles the weight of the content, because that's important. For example, the debt category. If you have large mortgages, large loans, which is frequent with many people, the number, basically the content in these columns will be much heavier. And you might, based on that, consider to increase paddings somewhere, to increase spacings. Have more breathing room for your content, make textual content easier to read. So I like to basically closer representation of the content that's close to reality. Doesn't need to be real. The tutorials don't need to be exact. Doesn't matter. So this is the income category. So this column for leftover debt or accumulated, I will just remove. Income is month per month. Planned and paid is also incorrect. It should be planned and received. Set up my layout so everything works pretty easily. In terms of incomes, I'll just keep them as 2 items. I might add a 3rd item for variety, but we have some salary and let's say investment income. And let's add another row. Sure, why not? Table row, regular. Let me see. Yeah, sorry, I figured out why I couldn't add my row. It was basically because I need to detach the instance of the container table from the component to change the number of items. And I'll change this to something, whatever, side hustle, something like that. So let's just change this to some more close to real numbers to see how that would how the layout would handle the content. But the expected, it should be all right. These tables, I have already thought about their layout and how the content would work in all variations. Now, actually, I didn't need to change these numbers. These numbers need to be hidden because they're not an active column anymore for the income table, at least. There we go. All right, and the total row. So here we have some close to real numbers. I'll keep them like this, something like that, whatever. The received side is a little bit different. I'll change this progress to a different instance to have variety. All right. So we need to change the new one text to new income. Okay, from here, the user will add a new category, which he can name and plan. So this is the income table added right here. You can see I've started to add significant items. Let's now add the expenses table. I'll remove the placeholder first, and I will add a table right here, right? There it is. So this will be the expenses table, which will be the longest one in terms of categories for most users. Again, I need to hide this column. So let me do that first so that I don't get confused like last time to edit the numbers. All right. Here we have planned and paid. That's paid is correct in this case, in my opinion. Yeah, let's add, we need more rows here. The reality is the expenses table will have a couple of rows for most users. All right. So I'll just input some random things, housing utilities. These will be real life use cases for categories. Housing utilities, groceries, restaurants, entertainment, subscriptions, not make a typo. I don't know. We cannot, let me think. Other categories I have in my budgeting app. Yeah, we have basically, yeah, personal care and stuff like personal care is not coding, and maybe some memberships for gym, clubs, stuff like that. I'll remove the other column, the other rows, because I don't want to come up with more categories. I think these are enough. We'll get an idea. Table is larger than the others. That's good enough. So here, yeah, these amounts are actually fine. I will change a few progress bars here and there so that we have a more real representation, the layout. And that's not critical, but just to get an idea of how things will look, more real idea. These component instances, I really like them in Figma, because um, just by naming things properly, in this case, let me show you. My components for the progress bars are just named table row, progress bar, slash 75, 50, and 25%. And just by that naming scheme, Figma is able to recognize that these are instances of the same thing, and I can just swap them here with the right click. That's pretty cool. I can appreciate that. So here, I don't want to call this a new expense because that's very incorrect. I'll call it new category. I could go with this if it fits. It's more verbose. By the same, probably, but income, sure. You could say this isn't an income, this is just a category, but income can be used easily for a category. Income in everyday language is frequently used for different categories of money inflows, while expense, a new expense, is usually not used as a category, especially in singular form. So I would probably just stick to category here for now. We'll see how it will go. It's inconsistent right now. Think about that. Okay, let's go with the debt table now. These are pretty similar so far, so but they need to be added. So this is actually pre-configured. It's the template. Oh, great. And I can add savings. Let's do that. Savings last. I opted to have savings last because in many cases they are the leftover amounts. some people which are more financially disciplined actually can plan savings first, another methodology. But I think for most people, savings are the last bucket they fill up, the last allocation they do after they have all of their expenses, including their debts. Okay, I need to increase the frame here as we don't have enough vertical space. That's fine. No problem whatsoever. All right. Yeah, savings accumulated, not leftover. This is how much you've saved. This is the plan for this period, and you already not paid, but I would call it saved here. I think it's more appropriate. And here, just two categories is fine. Let's say you have an emergency fund and some kind of a investment fund. Investments is fine. All right. And these numbers are just, they could be as high as this. That's fine. They represent well. Here, I would not say new savings. I'd say new fund. Because funds are frequently used for saving funds. And that's a good short word for this. Like won is used for that. Just category here is a very broad wording for the category of expenses, but I don't have a better idea at this point. So if I get a better idea, I'll swap it out. So I have my tables. Pretty cool, actually. I already started with this column, so I will swap the transactions button right now. Let's do that. All right. Let me just collapse these so I don't get confused. I need this header. Yeah. All right. Let me get buttons, and I want an icon button right here. Okay, I'll delete the placeholder, and I should be able to just change the text to new transaction. The plus sign is perfectly valid in this case. The plus icon, sorry. Sign icon, whatever. And okay, so far, be happy with how that column is turning out. Here in the month switch, we need to do something different, something custom. I don't have a ready-made component for that. So I'll keep the frame and the layout of that placeholder. I'll remove the stroke. And I'll change the layout to left aligned, left center. Remove all paddings. So the month text should be the same as this heading, because this month switch represents a heading for this whole category. This section, this layout section, the whole column doesn't really have a heading. So how this one has, and this is sort of imbalanced, but this month switch will actually be the heading because it will denote the current month. And there's no need to say budget here or budget period. That's, the user knows that implicitly. You don't need to tell him explicitly that's the budget category. If you just denote the budget period, in this case something like February 2024, you'll be able to figure out that these are the budgets for that period. But I need to use the same font size because these are the same hierarchy. And this is, I think, an H3. Let me see. Here I have my text styles, H3. Yeah, this is an H3. And I will change this to January, for example, 2024. Okay, some sample budget period. And now we need a couple of icons. I want a calendar icon before it and a chevron after it. I have these prepared. Calendar icon because, let me, did I drag that? Not sure. I don't think so. I need to drag it here, of course. Yeah, of course that should be smaller. This is 25 pixels in height, and I think something, sorry, constraint proportions, 25 in height. Something similar would be more appropriate. And a chevron after it. Let me add that as well. I have a chevron icon. I get confused here. Yeah, chevron icon. And that should be even smaller, probably something like 10 or a little bit higher. I do this very subjectively by looks. You can, in many cases, you need mathematics to make a harmonic layout, even spacings. In other cases, like this isolated component, I go with whatever looks good. Generally speaking, calculations, even spacings are the way to go for most layouts, in my opinion. So this looks good to me. I'll increase the spacing a little bit between the components, but here I need to change a few things. I don't want even spacings between these, and this frame needs to be a little bit larger. So I want the chevron to be, actually, even spacings might be a good idea. They're right now at 12, 13 might be optimal. Yeah, that doesn't look bad at all. I was thinking about having closer spacing between the chevron and the month. That doesn't make too much sense, to be honest. This whole thing is clickable, which also means we need to denote that it's clickable some way by using the active color. I can make the chevron active. That's one option. And this definitely won't be black. There'll be some shade of gray, the icon. Let me see. I have too many shades of gray, so I just have to experiment. It's very hard right now to see. I'll leave it black for now because this isn't the real background, which I'll be using in the end. But yeah, one option is to have the chevron as bool to denote the activeness that this is an active item. You can also make the heading bool and have them both. That might not be a bad idea. They are clickable elements. I'll think about that because it is pretty close to the new transaction button. Right now it doesn't look good with this background, but on a lighter background it would look great. I'll leave it like this for now, and we'll see how it goes. With the actual icon that is a lighter shade of gray, this might look very well. And the spacing between these two is good enough. There's enough space between them in order to separate them and be able to recognize that they're different items used for different things. I think it's fine. And I like the fact that everything clickable is bool immediately pops up this item for changing the period, this item for new transactions. That is the most prominent and it should be. And the new income items, which are a bit more subtle, but they're still clickable. I like the hierarchy and how it turned out. Seems logical to me. We'll see. When it's completed, some things might pop out as wrong or just confusing. And then we'll make adjustments. But for now, I'll go with this strategy. Okay, maybe now would be a good time to actually address the background colors because this whole section of budgets is pretty much done. So this will be as good a time as any to address the backgrounds before I move on to the other two sections. Now, right now I'm using very dark shades of gray. I definitely want to have separation between the navigation, this section, and this section. This section could be something very close to white without any issue whatsoever. In that case, I can make this section as light as possible so that these tables pop out as a lighter element because I want them to be lighter. This way they look more prominent. The background should be darker than the tables. So I'll make it as light as possible while maintaining the tables lighter, which doesn't seem too hard. They are grade 1. So grade 2 is the max I can take them to. And I think I'm happy with that. Now the sidebar navigation can be any color really at this stage, as long as it's not grade 2 so that it, blends into the main column. I think I'll just make it something like grade 3 or grade 4. Grade 4 seems a little bit heavy, so grade 3 is what I'll go with for now, at least. That's okay. Now I can adjust the icon. I don't think the icon needs to be an active color. It's not. Well, maybe the whole item will be clickable, a larger area. That will be denoted with a hover effect somehow. The icon is there to assist in the recognition, not particularly I don't like that. It becomes too monochrome, and it has an opposite effect of the boo is supposed to pop out and give you basically the boo together with the icon is supposed to be easily recognizable as clickable item pop out of the rest of the layout, and the icon sort of loses itself with all of the content that is blue basically. So if that needs to happen and everything to be blue, I can just as well remove the icon and the effect will be the same pretty much. I just don't see it. So I'll keep it gray. But I'm not sure what shade of gray. I'll just click them through to determine. It needs to be accessible in terms of contrast ratio still, even though I don't want it to be as strong. Maybe something like a gray 10 would be all right. Let me check out gray 9 as well. Yeah, gray 9, gray 8 might look well too. I'll go with the darker color. I'll go with gray 9 for now. Maybe even gray 10 to have higher contrast. When in doubt, I think that's the safer bet. Although, of course, contrast in relation to this icon is not that important, even if in some environments you don't see it very clearly, not a critical item. So that's fine. The textual content is the most important in terms of contrast, which is why I keep it very close to black whenever possible, and the background's close to white. All right, so section sort of complete, kind of. I would consider it complete. Yeah, I like how it turned out. It's concise, a lot of information, but I think it's organized so that you are able to scan it and analyze it. And there's enough spacing so that you can recognize different items and rows. Yeah, this is a very heavy example in terms of numbers also. You in a realistic environment, you might have less numbers. I might consider removing the 0.00 at the end. That's that would make the content much lighter. It helps a little bit. I've included it because I find that including 0.00 at the end of every item that basically doesn't have anything after the decimal point is very sort of denotes that this is a decimal number in accounting style, and you cannot sort of confuse it with another number style. This is very frequently used in accounting, clearly recognizable. In this case, this isn't like a spreadsheet application. The person is clearly aware where he is. He's planning his budget, so he knows these are numbers related to currencies and amounts, and decimal currency type numbers. So these 00 items might be unnecessary if there is nothing after the decimal point. Yeah, I probably will remove these. Don't want to do that in the video because it would take time. I might do it with implementation. We'll see. All right, let's continue now. Next up, I can address this now. The sidebar. I'll leave the logo with a placeholder for now. Although I'm working on the branding of the application, it's still not entirely finished. But, whatever, let me open the branding. I could include the draft logo for now, even if it changes in the budget in the future. So this is the basic branding I'm planning. Yeah, nothing special. Just looked for relevant domains, keywords that I could utilize, and that's something that came up. So I'll just copy the logo. I can always swap it later if necessary. Now, this logo is a different shade of blue. The entire branding is different shade of blue than the active colors. I'm not concerned about that at all. I'll tell you in a second why. Let me just position this properly. It's currently in the left column. It should be in the aside in that frame right here. Yeah, let me remove the logo and resize this down so that it fits. I'm not concerned about this at all being a different shade of blue because I don't plan to use the colorful logo here. And I don't use this shade of blue because it's too dark. this vibrant, I'm sorry, this vibrant blue color is very frequently used for active elements because it's, yeah, as I said, more vibrant, brighter color. This is more dark, and I like it in terms of branding and how it represents basically the logo in a more upmarket kind of way. If I change this to the more vibrant brighter blue, which I'm using as a primary active color, it looks a little bit more like candy, like, you know, this gives it a more luxurious feel. Just in terms of color, that's how I see it. And I'm not worried about colors clashing here because it's two blues, as I don't plan to use the logo in its original color at all. It will be a shade of gray, as I don't want it to be confused as a clickable item. It won't be a clickable item right here. So we're just going to use a shade of gray. Some shade of gray that is dark. I will think about this shade of gray as I add the icons as well. Because here we have two shades of gray from the calendar and the logo. Maybe it makes sense to make them the same shade. Otherwise they clash too much and it looks kind of busy. This I think is gray 9 or gray 10. Is it gray 9? It looks darker. Yeah, it's gray 10. So this will probably need to be gray 10 as well. So that we have a more balanced look. Yeah, that looks better, definitely. I might make it smaller. Let's see. Let's add all of the icons and then I'll adjust the sizing when I see the actual layout, how it turns out. Right now, this is a pretty cramped navigation. I want it like that. I don't want it to take too much space. But because of that, the larger icons look out of place. They don't have enough room. I might need to size them down a bit. And I will. That's not an issue. So let's add icons here. I have icons for these. The dashboard will have a budget icon. Let me find it. Here it is. The wallet, right? Yeah, I want to use the wallet. I rename this to logo. I'll remove the dash link. The wallet, I'll size it later. And let's first add the settings icon. Gear icon right here. All right. And now let's size them down. So right now they're too big. Visible, there's too, the space is small. They look out of place. I will size them down significantly. Let me first set them to be constrained in proportions. I think something like 34 pixels is minimum, but maybe even smaller. Maybe around 30 looks pretty good in terms of width. I want to see how the other icon looks at 30 as well. Right. And I might need to increase the spacing because they look cramped right now and they have a lot of place, a lot of space, sorry. So right now it's 20. I'll definitely bump it to at least 30. Maybe 34 would be more appropriate. Yeah, that looks a lot better. So logically, this should be sort of the active color. Now, in this case, too many blue clickable items. I don't like that. Because of that, a secondary active color is useful in some cases. These, as they are menu items, they can have a good hover effect, and this is clearly a menu. I could leave black in reality. They are, yes, they are interactable. The user can easily recognize that this is a navigation to the site. Plus yes, the wallet icon is not that recognizable, but this gear icon is widely used as a menu item to navigate to the settings view. This is pretty easy to understand. In fact, looking at them, I think I'll go a little bit lower with the size. I'll go to 27, as they are solid icons. So that looks pretty nice. The logo I want a little bit bigger, not that big. Although it looks nice because it's as in height, its height is the same as this one. But I think I can keep the height and just, yeah, I don't want to distort it. I want to change the layout here like this. Let me see if I can do that. fixed height. All right, yeah, that's what I wanted. So I want the height to be as much as this panel right here. That is 50. Let's get that to 50. All right. And the actual icon, now I can, oh, sorry, constraint proportions, the actual logo, now I can make smaller. To 40, something like 40, maybe 34. 34 is a little bit on the small side. 37 is, I want it to be a little bit bigger than the active items because they are also dark. But this seems pretty nice. Seems to be balanced to me at least. I don't see it 100% scale. Seems to be balanced pretty well. These are clearly inactive. These are clearly active. These not so much. But if I add an indicator here, show that this item specifically is currently active, that would help a lot significantly. Let's do that. Maybe a line would be enough. At the end of that, right here, let me see the settings for it. Or did I add that? All right, at the logo. Yeah, that's actually pretty hard to do right now because of the layout settings. Damn. Let me see. How would I do that in the easiest way possible? Yeah, I would make this entire frame not have padding like this. It will look the same, but here in that frame, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Here in that frame, the wallet icon, I will be able to create a new layout. Sorry, not here. This is a component, so I need a new frame here. And that component inside of it, I need it to have an automatic layout, everything centered in terms of height, hook, in terms of width, fill. Yeah, that's a good way to do that. And here I can add my line, basically. All right. I actually don't want an automatic layout here. I thought I did. I don't. I want my line to be on the right. No. Sorry, I didn't remove the auto layouts after all. Right, I want my line to the right. Let me resize my now. So the frame should be as big as the icon. Okay. And the line should be smaller or equal, but smaller usually works better because this will be the active color and it's pretty recognizable. We just with 25, I'll go with 15 for now. That should be fine. Let's see if we can center, and that's centered actually. All right. So the stroke of this will be the active bool. That helps. The line, of course, can be a little bit thicker, maybe 3 pixels. Am I increasing the width? Or is it okay? 2 might be more appropriate in that case. Let's see now. Yeah, that definitely looks better. Yeah, in fact, this shouldn't be bool, ideally. This item is entirely inactive at this stage. So, I mean, it's the active item, but it's inactive in a sense that it's clicked already. The other items are clickable in that sense. So green would be a more appropriate color for this line right here, denoting the current active item. That might be a bad idea actually, but I'll think about it. For now, I'll leave it. Might change its color, might change the color of the navigation completely. We'll see. But I think it might be a bad idea because it clashes a lot with the progress bars. It doesn't represent the same thing, and I don't like it particularly. But yeah, I'll think about it. I might just make it bool on hover. Bool and appearing on hover. That's basically one idea. not an active item, but cover element. All right. Either way, I'll leave it here if I want to implement it to reference style and position. So the user panel, I don't have an icon for it. I just want it to be a profile picture. I usually use the free icons from Font Awesome. I just search for user. Here we go. Here's the user icon. In Figma, you can just copy the SVG code, paste it right here. I won't just paste it. I'll create a component in case I need to reuse it. Let me size it similar to other icons I have here. Okay. And right now, I will name it icon user. Add it to group of icons. Let me find it. And create a component from this button. And now I can use it right here. In my user panel. I need to add it in the sidebar. Let's go to icons and here it is. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Let's see the size of the icon so that I can size it similarly. 27. These are 27 by 27. I will use 27 in width. This icon is higher, but that's good. Let's check it out. Now I don't like that because there is very big inconsistency. Here I used field icons for the navigation, and this icon is only with outlines, and it's very inconsistent. There is a field user icon, so I use that. Let me see the other items. Yeah, I like this one. So I'll change it now. I think I cannot easily, let me see. I should be able to paste the vector here. Yes. Remove the frame. See, what's the size of this one? 54. Oops. Constraint proportions. And now just drag it over and remove the old one. And that should have updated it right here. Yes. Great. Sort of like it. Still have some doubts about the black navigation items. We'll see. We'll see how I'll just think about them and experiment with a few colors, but now that's not that important. These can always be adjusted. At this stage, this is all right for a first iteration on the design. And let's go to the summary part. That's very interesting. Here we need cards. To do that, I'll see I don't have a card component, which is probably a mistake. But I want a frame with 13 border radius, which shouldn't be 13. Let me adjust that. It should be 10 because every other border radius is 10 for consistency. And I can adjust that in the component right here. So this should be usable right here. I should be able to just use the same frame, and I will. Actually, I detached these frames, so I need to update them one by one. That's not too much trouble. They're just 4. Let's see. Yeah, that's already 10. And that's not detached, so only 2 are detached. Good. All right. So I'll keep this frame. I'll just change its style to this style. Copy the background color. I think this is this background color is grade 3, probably. Think so. Let's add it, and we'll match it. It should be grade 3 or grade 2. No, I think it's grade 2, but I have the wrong frame. I'm interested in that frame right here. Fill is grade 2. Is it really? No, it's grade 1. But right now the background of this section is gray 1, so I will make it white because there's no reason why it wouldn't be white, except maybe contrast with this section becomes much darker. Yeah, I don't like that. So these will be white boxes, probably white cards. Let's see how they look as white cards. I don't want them to be too different from these, but I don't think they will look that much different. Let's add the border radius. Am I doing the wrong frame again? Yes, I am. All right. This frame shouldn't have a fill. Okay. White, 10 pixels border radius. Good. I have a card. It's not very mm, it's not very easy to recognize. The difference between white and this background is not that recognizable. I don't like that at all. But grade 2 is too strong. One option would be box shadows, but I don't have any. I don't want to add any. So a medium color between grade 2 and grade 1 and grade 2 would be ideal. Let me see. I might add one. After all, the colors are here just to help. So F9, this is what? Grade 2 is E6. Okay, something between F9 and T6 in the grayscale. That wouldn't be too easy. But all these Fs seem to work very well. EF also. EC. I sort of like these. EF seems to work pretty well. I'm wondering if I can update. What is this? What? Uh, this used to be gray 2, gray 1. So I need gray 1.5. Right now, I'll just leave it as a custom color. I don't need to add that gray, especially since it's the background of one of 3 columns. But it's definitely better in terms of contrast here. The actual boxes pop up more. Now that inconsistency is not very nice. The fact that here we're dark to white. I mean, here we're also dark to white, but these are lighter than the tables. I don't like that particularly. Let me see if I can remedy that. Can I now go to gray 1? I can, and that's much better. Let's see how much darker we can get this section for higher contrast. EC, EC, EC might be optimal here. I like the gradual differences between the 3. They are not too far apart in terms of color scheme. I mean the difference between the nav first column and the third column. And when we have the same color for the cards, it looks much more harmonic, unified in terms of style. I didn't like the white boxes, so we'll go with that for now. I like how it looks. Okay, so this card is a stat. It needs to state right here a couple of textual items. First, income. Let me see, income planned and left to budget. So income, let's do a text style of H6. Great. Copy. Right now we have a horizontal layout. We want a vertical layout for now. Income and some number, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Just some 4-digit number here. That would be a different style, maybe an H5, but I prefer an H4, something more prominent but smaller than the headings. Would work amazing here. That's, yeah, I need more content here. So let's see how it will fit. I will first add it and then we'll see. So I needed, what did I need here? Income, planned and left to budget. Planned, another, let's say it's 1,000 here. It's another number. Oh, I was just typing the title of the actual item layer. And a third item, that is, all right, one more number. We're struggling to fit these for now. We'll see. I think they will fit. Left to budget will be, yeah, 500 in this case. So, how are we going to fit this? I have a couple of options. Income plan can be on one row, left to budget on the second. That would scale well. I think that's a pretty good idea, actually. But to achieve that, I need to group this. I need to group this as well. Actually, not group, I will frame them. That will be better because I can control their layout more precisely. Like this. Auto layout. Great. I will actually copy this frame and change again the content because it would be faster. All right. Remove plant. Copy this frame. Yeah. Inefficient, but faster. Okay. So I have 3 frames and I'll put these two in a separate frame. Have a fill container width and a fixed size. Yeah, for now, fixed. And a horizontal layout. So let's put these 2 frames inside and we'll see what happens. Horizontal layout. I want them kind of centered. Yeah, that's good. I want this to be, oh, it is hugging it right now. But why are they so white? Maybe the textual content for that one? Or padding. 0 padding. Actually, we need some padding. 10 padding. Top, bottom. Like this. That's better. And yeah, this needs similar settings, although it's alone on its own row. Now, these need to be gray. The top headings, because they are the insignificant part. That's too light, of course. I'll go with grade 10 again. Grade 10. And again, this should have been a component. It would have been easier to update it. So at this stage, I can make this frame. Yeah, this frame is fixed height. I want it to have contents and check out its paddings. But no, these frames have paddings. They shouldn't. Yeah, they shouldn't. Definitely. That's all right. These items have paddings. So I'll change that as well if it has any. No, it doesn't have vertical padding. So at this stage, I can adjust the padding of this whole frame, which I'll call plant income LTB card. And the space between them can be 10. 10 was good, actually. I might go with 15 for a little bit more space. Well, the padding can be 20, I believe. Let me see. It will take too much space. I don't think so. I think it's fine. Looks all right. A little bit weird because everything else is left aligned. This is centered, but it's always like that with center with text align center layouted items within left aligned elements. Sometimes they make sense though. This could be left aligned. Let's leave it like that for now until I complete the other card. I want to see how they will look together. That's important. It's not perfect, definitely. I'll adjust it. Okay, this, remove that and copy that card. What, let me just see, point actual current cache. Yeah, pretty similar. So plant actual. Here the order is wrong. I see right now it should be income first. Come on, income first, then plant, and then the left of budget, because this minus this equals this. In fact, a cool interface might be to actually add the minus and equal signs here. I would think about that. It's not too gimmicky. It shows something. But let's see. So here it's planned versus actual. Uh, yeah, planned versus actual, which might be 500, for example. And we have the current cache, which in this case should be, yes, 500. We have two of these stats. I definitely want to check out how they would look left aligned, or even if I can fit them on one row. But they definitely will not fit on one row with every possible amount. Like if the income is 5 or 6 figures, no way. But these are rare cases or smaller screens, so it might break 10 to multiple rows. And have them on one row right now. Let's check that out. Doesn't seem right this way. Right? They don't fit with these settings, but let's adjust them. So 5 pixels padding. Let's change everything to 5 pixels padding. This would make the spacing between them 10 pixels. Okay, they almost fit this way. We just need to lower the padding of the container a bit to 10, which does make it a little bit annoying, at least, because it's inconsistent some way. The other elements, the other cards in the tables have a 20 pixel padding or higher. Is 10, yet it fits. The centrally aligned labels are not that nice though, and the left to budget is larger. So if I do that, make this left aligned, this layout, would that work better? Probably. It does seem to work well. Let me see the frame padding again. I could lower the font sizes, but they're not really problematic. If I remove the zero-based decimal places, they fit pretty well actually. Might do that, but it's worth considering in any case that a 4-figure with 2 decimal spaces would be the most likely scenario. So even if I remove them in some cases to make it cleaner, that needs to be supported for sure. And hmm, this isn't particularly bad. Of course, if you have more digits here, you would go to this layout, but that's fine. That's good in this case. It won't be this layout though, because it's left aligned. I think about it a little bit more. The other option, yeah, I don't think there's that much to think about it. Even if I have it on 2 rows, the left aligned option is I like more. So if I increase that to 20 as I want it to be, and I go to the previous arrangement where this was on a separate row, I like this more than the alternative. Of course, you have empty space on the right, because it almost fits, but it doesn't. Yet, it looks better than the alternative. I believe it's more consistent with the rest of the layout, for sure. So let's convert that as well to the same layout, and that's not to left aligned yet. Okay. It's interesting. To remedy this spacing, I could work with this frame to have them like this. That might be a better option. Justified. layout, sort of. The best of both worlds, maybe. It's a good compromise. Yeah. It might also make sense to center this second item, but still have the text alignment to the left. That might also be a good idea. Let me check how that would work out. In order to do that, I need, yeah, that's that layout. That layout is also possible. It's not particularly bad, but I don't like it too much. A little bit, yeah, too much empty spaces open up, which I dislike. The scanning of content is harder than this. So I think I'll go with this for now as sort of optimal. Of course, this is how it looks, particularly on that width, which is not desktop, it's smaller, more than full HD. So on a larger screen, I'll be able to fit the three next to each other, which is perfect. But we need to account for imperfect scenarios, which that is. And that's exactly the reason why I'm not working on full HD. It's extremely easy to design for full HD, while all of the problems come on these middle laptop smaller resolutions. So I want to address them right now in the design to think about them. Okay, let's move on to the pie chart, as we wasted a lot of time on these. They are good for now. The pie chart, I want the same style gray one. Let's just do it. Gray 1 and 10 pixels radius. All right. So we have the container for the pie chart. I won't draw a pie chart from scratch. There's no point. I probably wouldn't do it. I want to create the charts for my app. I will use a library. There's no point investing time in that. There is a charts.js Figma. Ready Figma. You know, ready-made files with Figma components. Let me find them. Here I have saved one, which I found on the internet. Someone basically spent the time to take the charts.js library and recreate the charts for them in Figma. I don't know if this is officially maintained. No, it's community maintained by the community. So I can just copy a chart from here. And I don't want the legend because I won't include a legend in my chart. I just want the chart element. Actually, so there are a couple of options. I was planning to not include this legend because it takes a lot of space and it's not so useful. My covers will denote different spending categories, and I plan on a hover to show the if that's a debt, expense, savings, or of course an income. No, actually, the pie chart will not show incomes. It will show debt, savings, and expenses. So these three colors will be denoted. If you hover over an item, it will show you the category name that's custom input by the user, and if it's debt, expenses, or savings. So the legend is unnecessary. I'm sure now that it's unnecessary. I'll use this donut chart and I'll just copy it. Pretty cool in Figma how you can just copy from another part and from another file and it just works. The only problem is I copied the wrong thing. I don't need the whole item. Let me find that. Is that it? Maybe. This is the legend. This is the title. And these ellipses. Okay. That's what I need. All right, paste it now. See. Okay. Here it is. I don't want any fill on it. I don't really need the frame as well, but it's fine. It's fine that it's here. I want it in that frame. Okay. And now I can resize it down to fit. But it doesn't because wait. This fixed content, I need to scale it down actually, not resize it. Can I do that? I can. Of course I can. Let me resize it back up the frame. Now just group these and resize. So the pie chart definitely need to have some spacing around it, of course. I'll remove that frame altogether. I don't need it. So yeah, should have space. It will definitely be center aligned. That's important. And let's apply my colors, which I plan to use for the chart. I'll have 3. So these I'll update together. I've saved a couple of colors. Now one option is to go to the opposite end. I have a primary and secondary colors that are called basically blue and green. I can make the chart red, orange, yellow. That's one option. Let's try it out. Update the red items. Change this to orange and yellow. That's one option. It stands out maybe too much. I might need to go with an opacity on the colors and have them that strong on hover. That's one option. Another option is to experiment with different colors. So let's do that first. Another option is to go with closer colors like purple, pink, and indigo, because these are closer to the primary colors. Still, they are different enough so that you recognize that this is not a clickable item, clearly. It is hoverable and infographic, but it's not a CTA, clickable button, whatever. And I think I like this option more. It just fits more with the overall feeling of the app. The color colors match these better. There are a softer transition towards different color scheme. Now let's test a little bit of opacity still, because I don't know, it seems a little bit excessive. So at 80%, for example, might be a little bit too much at 80% actually. There I have problems, but I just want to visualize the colors. Actually, 80 seems pretty good. It's not that bad. I mean, the more pastel range really helps the diagram to blend in a bit. I like that. 90 is another option I want to test out how it looks. It's sort of a middle. It might actually be the best option, so that the colors are still vibrant, not too vibrant, and we have a space to actually work on hover. That's also important. But as I look at it, it's a little bit too strong, so I'll try 85, and that might be the best option for me. Check that out. Yeah, 85, 100 on hover. That's what I'm going for. These are easily adjustable, of course. Now, because these annoy me, I need to convert these to solid colors. That's the easiest way to do it. The other option would be to combine the shapes. Let's see if I can. It was somewhere in here. Yeah, union. Oh, nice. Very nice. So now I just need to change. Now I just have this problem. And this problem, I can make that a solid color. Not that big of a deal. Let me see. How I can color pick it. I don't think I can easily color pick it. Oh, I can just adjust that. Nice. That's pretty cool. Really like that. I don't even know how that is set up, but that's good. Wow. Okay. Great. Now this is very plain. Of course, here it would be a little bit more busy. I will be able to uh, first of all, we'll have fragmented categories within these. For now, I'll just demonstrate what the general idea is by, let me remove that, how to lay out here. So as I was, let me just remove it before I add that because it's centered and I like it. And remove the layout and then write that. So as I was mentioning, probably I won't have these right here, but I will have other items that denote the different categories here when I configure the charting library and the reporting. So for now, I will just add a couple of labels for the three categories right here, expenses and um, savings. Again, the spacing is incorrect. The labels are not correct as well. We'll have different labels, but there will be additional content to the sites, which I want to illustrate. This whole point, this section will be done when I develop the app and when I experiment with Charge.js and what is the optimal reporting in the code. Point here is to design see the color scheme and the colors. That's important, and that is already done. So I'm moving on to the transactions table. The transactions table, I will insert one of the table components, which I have right here. Let me find it, and I need to modify it after that. So let me see where I inserted it. Inside the transactions table. Here's where it needs to be. So I'll use the same table layout. Here I have transactions, and they will have, now a transaction will have a date, and actually the most important counts in a transaction are a date and an amount. Date, amount, date category, and amount. And here I'll add a couple of dummy transactions. Let me detach this instance and I'll add more table rows. I'll remove this because here we don't need to have, we already have a new transaction button. In fact, I might have to, even if new transaction here is sort of available, a new transaction button here that's secondary might kind of solve my concern about the transaction button being too far away from the transactions table. So that's okay. Given that this is established as a way to create new rows, I like that. Of course, these progress bars need to go. There won't be any progress bars. So I will hide the progress. Let me do that here as well. And here. I should have done that before I duplicate, but yeah, then think about it. And here we have a couple of transactions. Yeah, just some dummy data, some dummy dates. Now, the date formatting is actually important, but I wouldn't spend too much time on it in the design. I will implement location specific formatting for the dates. Here I'm doing the most basic format, represent that this is a date. I will say groceries at store or whatever. This is just the user input description, so it doesn't matter that much. Dinner at restaurant. Couple of transactions, okay. And here are more realistic numbers. All right. And yeah, after we have more realistic numbers, okay, that's a mistake. The amount is here. This is the category. So I'm just copying this over. And the categories will be utilities, groceries, gifts, restaurants, dining. I don't want to resize the column. So for the illustrative purposes, I'll keep them like this. We don't have a total row here or here because it's a category only in the amount. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary at all. So in this case, new transactions shouldn't be centered, even though I've removed that. I'll change the layout of the frame to be left aligned. This is all right for now. Now I also need to be able to search, filter, and filter transactions. Filters, I'm not sure how they would happen yet. For search, I will insert, let me find that. I'll insert the frame here, controls right here. So this frame will be filled in terms of height, width, and it will include a search bar. Let me add it from components, input, search. Okay. Automatic layout, left aligned on the frame. No padding or margins for now. And I'll change that to search transactions. And I'll change its width. It doesn't need to be that wide. That's probably fine. Besides that, here we should have other controls. I am considering the filters and sorting, how they would work. I am thinking, so sorting should definitely happen by clicking on the items. Filters, on the other hand, I think should happen in a different manner. Because usually you can filter, you have this design pattern to implement a filter on click as a drop down right here. I don't particularly like that. And I have space here to implement filters where I have a drop down and a word. So that is an option. Another option is to have, seen as I have an amount, I can search by an amount and I can sort by date. I could probably only have a category drop down here. Because you can sort by date, you can filter by category through this drop down, and you can search for an amount and sort for an amount. And that's pretty much enough. Yeah, that's how I'm going to work. That's how I'm going to do it for now. That seems very reasonable to me. Let's do a horizontal layout here. And I will, of course, I want them like this. Let's now take this select field, make it smaller first. All right. This layout will be like this. Although, yeah, justify is okay in this case. And it will say select category. Filter by category. So yeah, that should be fine. It's clear that this is for transactions because I can probably actually, as this is a separate item, it's somewhat clear that it concerns the table below, especially here it says search transactions and transactions, but because they are not boxed together, you might get confused that this is related to the item above or something else. So I think I'll separate these with a line between the reporting and the transactions. Well, we'll add a line here, hoping it will help with that specific item. So let's see, it's 1 pixel. I want it like that. And I want some of the grays. It's gray 4, something like that. Should be fine. So yeah, that provides the separation needed to know that these filters and search functions are basically for for that exact reason. Let's do fill container here and fill container here. And spacing, I think here we have 20 between the columns. So I'll use the same for now. I think I might need to increase that, but I'll talk about that in a second. So I am kind of happy with that. Another thing to consider is here we need pagination, which we need to implement on this site. How is that going to work? I think, let me remove that total row. I have a link. Remove these. Yeah, I need to detach the total row. It's not even close to the original component anymore, so that doesn't matter. So here I need next page. That's pretty much enough. And I need a frame here because I want an icon, of course. But still, this will be within that frame. And that frame will have an auto layout. Okay, great. And now I can add the icon right here. My chevron icon. I can rotate it. Make it smaller, of course. All right. And go with the primary color. Let me find that. I got lost in so many frames. Okay, this is the next page link. Great. The spacing between the two needs to be lower. Close to 0, but maybe at 4 pixels is fine. And the previous page link will be very similar. It won't show up all the time. Let me first see the layout of this. Yeah, I'll copy that for now. And I'll lower the spacing, although that won't be the total layout. That won't be the layout at all. So I just want to set up the previous page. Here we move the chevron to the left, rotate it horizontally. Yeah, they're out of place now, but this will be previous page. Let's move them. So, okay. Now these need to be in a frame together. So I'll do that so that they can be in a separate layout from the other item, which is the new transaction link. Auto layout, in this case. Yeah. Horizontal layout, centered. I don't know where the next page link is. Okay, here it is. That's interesting. I don't understand why it's there. Let me see. Doesn't seem to respect the layout. Let me see right now. I don't necessarily need that layout, to be fair. Let me see. Yeah. This is such a simple layout that I can do it like this. Just need 20 pixels between them. They are in the frame, so they should be able. Okay. I laid them out now. That's good. And I can increase space between them. Let's check out. Great. I want 20 pixels between them. And the layout between the link and that needs to change to spaced out centered layout. Now I can add a little bit more space here because we need it really. Page is completely unnecessary because it's ambiguous. And that's a lot better. Definitely. Considering that previous will not show up in most cases, I'm pretty happy with that. The icon is not really centered. Why is that? Oh, it's not optically centered. It is perfectly centered, actually. That's not a big issue, actually. Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. I need to make a frame in order to center it optically. I can do that during implementation. I see that I've moved the entire right column. Not a big deal. I'll get it in place. Okay. And this is the finished initial version of the design. Of course, I might need to iterate multiple times on that, but I am very happy with this so far. Now, we didn't, of course, make the transactions model, the new transaction model and the update transaction model. I have the component design, and I'll just use that design to implement it directly when I'm creating the view. It's good enough that I have a layout of the model, the icon, and how it looks. No need to create separate artboards for that, considering I'll need to do that either way. I will also not bother to create this mobile view because I don't find it necessary right now. I can arrange it. I can just arrange it during implementation. I have all the visuals, all of the layouts already, all of the spacings ready. I'll just rearrange the layout. The general layout, take the menu bar to the bottom and hide the right section. I can adjust spacings in the code. This wireframe is enough to guide me how to lay it out, given what I already have. The final thing I want to test is to increase the spacings here in the general layout. I have 20 pixels between each table and each card here, which I want to test if I can increase to 30. It feels a little bit cramped, and 30 is a lot better. I like it a lot more. Yeah. So I'm going with 30. And let's see if I need to increase anything else. I need to increase the spacing between this, better, and this. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Definitely. A lot more breathing room and content, not so content heavy with a small change. And I like how it aligned with the navigation bar by itself with the first icon. It turned out great. Okay, so this is the first version we're going for. I'm happy with that. That will work as a first iteration. With this, I'll wrap today's video. If you enjoy the series, don't forget to subscribe to get notified when the next video is released. Take care.